A lot of pressure. At any rate, we'd like to welcome all of you to McLean High School, home of the Highlanders. We're very proud of our Highlander pride. Very grateful to have all of you here today, alongside of our governor, the first partner, and many of our other local dignitaries to speak on a crucial issue of importance about mental health supports for our students. Special thanks to my dear friend, Principal Brian Wolf, and his entire team for their willingness to accommodate and welcome everyone here with such hospitality. I don't speak with any degree of surprise when I say that the mental health and social emotional wellness of our students is the top priority of ours, because we know that suicide is actually the second leading cause of death nationally for our students aged 10 to 14. And all of those issues have been amplified by the pandemic. Or we find our kids are bouncing back academically much quicker than they are from a social emotional perspective. As a district, I'm incredibly proud of the significant amount of investment that's been placed in mental health supports for our kids right here in Fresno Unified. Thanks to the direction of our board, many of whom are here with us today, and the implementation from our Department of Prevention and Intervention, alongside our entire Fresno Unified family, those investments and supports have grown markedly over the last decade. Over that time, that budget for the Department of Prevention and Intervention has ballooned from $5 million to over $38 million, and our staffing in that area has grown from 50 to well over 250, because it's important that kids have the mental resources that they need in order to adequately learn. Most of those staffs are located right here on our school sites instead of being held centrally, so that they are interacting with kids every day. Here at McLean, we actually have a wellness hub. It includes 3 full-time social workers, a full-time restorative practices counselor, a full-time child welfare and attendance specialist, and 2 full-time psychologists. That's in addition to our 7 academic counselors at McLean, who we know also provide social emotional supports to our students. Additionally, it's not just about the kids, it's also about the faculty that we serve and our family members. All of our students and their families, as well as our personnel across the district, have access to Care Solace. It's a free mental health concierge service to ensure that everybody who needs those services gain access to them at any time. We're super thankful for our partnership with my dear friend, Superintendent Jim Iovino, Superintendent-elect Michelle Cantwell-Cofer. The All for Youth partnership has a mission to put a mental health professional licensed in every single school, in every single district across Fresno County. There's no other county that's doing that, bar none. There are more investments that I could elucidate, but nobody wants to hear me talk. I know that of a surety, but with that, I'll turn the time over to my dear friend, our board president, Elizabeth Johnson-Rosas, who will share some more important information about mental health supports for students. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Superintendent Nelson, and thank you to the McLean team for your amazing work today and every day. I also want to shout out our board clerk, Genoveva Islas, who is also the trustee representing this area, the McLean region. And I need to acknowledge my colleagues who are in the audience who work tirelessly on behalf of our kids. I know I speak for myself and our entire board when I say that mental health and social emotional supports are a top priority for this Board of Education. As a foster parent myself, I know firsthand some of the challenges our kids face, and how critical these supports are in ensuring our students can fully engage in their academics. You can't learn if you're hungry, and you can't learn if you don't have the right headspace. We're proud to have the governor, the first partner, and other dignitaries here to acknowledge what a model Fresno Unified has become for supporting the social, emotional, and mental health needs of our students, many of which are possible thanks to the state's increased investment in education. Superintendent Nelson mentioned a few key investments, and I'm not going to mention them all, but I am delighted to share a few more. I'm incredibly proud of our district's on-call mental health response team that is available and monitoring any urgent mental health needs 24/7, including suicide assessments. To our knowledge, we are the only district to provide this life-saving service. And thanks to our partnership with Gaggle that monitors chats and emails for any threats or harm to self or others, they dispatch our on-call mental health response team immediately. This team has saved lives, and I couldn't be more grateful or proud. We have also doubled down on preventative efforts. In this year's budget, we have approved an implementation of a universal district-wide K-12 social emotional curriculum for all staff across Fresno Unified. These are just a couple of the examples of innovative ways we're supporting our students and ensuring their social, emotional, and mental health needs are met. Thank you again for highlighting our district work and your continued support of our over 70,000 students. With that, I'd like to introduce Fresno County Supervisor Brian Pacheco. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Johnson Rojas. On behalf of the County of Fresno, I want to thank Governor Newsom for being here today. As a former school board member, I saw students struggle with mental health issues and anxiety that would challenge most adults way before the pandemic. Having these comprehensive counseling programs in our schools will be a tremendous benefit to our students and their families. With the stay-at-home orders and lack of socialization experienced during the pandemic, these programs are even more important for our students. For years, student mental health was an issue that did not have a lot of traction, but the pandemic pushed it to the forefront for almost every home with a child. The problem is made even worse because many parents are simply not equipped to deal with these issues the same way that the schools can. I am proud that our county, with help from the state, our governor, will work to meet our young people's needs with their health challenges head on and get them back on a path that will improve their ability to cope with the issues they face in their daily lives. They now have the tools that they will need to thrive and succeed in this ever-increasing demanding environment. Now I'd like to introduce Assemblymember Dr. Joaquin Arambula. Thank you.
I want to thank Supervisor Pacheco, but I also want to begin by acknowledging all of the hard work that Governor Newsom and his administration has done to address youth behavioral health. It is very clear to anyone who meets the governor that he cares about children, not only his own, but all of our children in the great state of California. The governor and the state legislature have invested billions of dollars over the last year to make sure that young children have a healthy start to their life and education by passing and supporting nutritious meals for all, by expanding health care, and by investing into getting a good education. Now, we also have dedicated resources to support and improve the mental health and well-being of our children. Early in the pandemic, many of us recognized the COVID earthquake that would lead towards a tsunami and a behavioral health crisis to follow. Tragically, data helps to bear this out. It shows significantly increasing rates of mental illness and substance abuse, especially among our children. During the pandemic, I held town halls where I heard directly from youth about what the crisis was having and impact on their lives and what their friends were going through, as well as how hard it was on them, particularly for our LGBTQ+ youth. Our children deserve the most out of their potential, and they deserve to wake up feeling strong and healthy, mentally and physically. That is something that we can all agree on. This plan lays out how we can achieve just that, by giving our children the tools and resources that they need and deserve to thrive. California is stepping up for our youth, for our families, for our schools, and for our communities. This is a problem that is long overdue for a solution, and all of us here can rest easier knowing that the children will be supported both at school and at home. I am grateful for the leadership from this administration in addressing this crisis head-on. I will add personally to the first partner who's here and their effort in making sure that we have access to green spaces for all, the investments that have been made here at the San Joaquin River Conservancy to allow our youth to be able to access the second longest river, the jewel that we have here in the Central Valley, and how important that is for the mental health and well-being of our children. Thank you for coming here to the Central Valley. Next, I will be introducing Congressmember Jim Costa.
Thank you, Assemblymember Dr. Joaquin Arambula, for the good work you do for our valley, and Superintendent Bob, and the chair of the Fresno Unified Board of Trustees, Supervisor Pacheco, and the faculty of McLean High School, home of the Highlanders, right? Yeah. Governor, you didn't think you were coming to the home of the Highlanders here in Fresno, did you? Well, we're glad you're here. We're glad that you and the first partner are here because, as has been noted, I know the governor. I know how much he loves his family and his children, and he has that same view and attitude as it relates toward the children of California. Because while today's announcement and bill signing ceremony is about dealing with the challenges of mental health among our young people, what we're really talking about is investing in the future of California and America. Because over half the state's budget goes to public education. And frankly, it's the most important investment among all these other important priorities that we do here in California, because it's the future. I always tell students to do me a favor when I talk to them. They're like, I mean, you're a congressman. What kind of favor can I do for you? I said, do well in school. Do well in school, because you're our future. And today, we are reeling still with the after effects of the great pandemic. I doubt that any of us sitting around in a room 3 years ago, anticipating what a pandemic would do to our state, to our country, and to the world, that we could have anticipated how it would ripple through every social and economic fabric of America. But it has, and we've seen the impacts. And that's why this support for mental health, for services to our young people is so critical, because the world has changed. And we have a lot of challenges in schools today that, 2-3 decades we did not have. Mental health being among the leading factors of dealing with the other causes that involve substance abuse and violence in schools and all sorts of other factors, but they all end up being with the mental health of our young people. And this pandemic has ravaged every social fabric with social stratification in ways that we could not have anticipated. Therefore, Governor, your efforts and the legislature's efforts are critical. And I think we all know that we've seen school violence across America, and the lack of response in other parts has been appalling. But we finally came together in Congress to pass earlier this year, after Uvalde and after so many other school violence incidences, the Safer Communities Act. What's the Safer Communities Act do? It provides more federal money for mental health services than we've ever seen in the history of our nation. It provides, yeah, you can applaud for that. $240 million for 4-year programs that increase awareness of mental health issues among school-aged children. Support for states to expand your mental health services, as we're doing here in California. And probably very much critical to what we're doing here in Fresno Unified, the third largest. This is the third largest school district in California. Think about that. What we're doing is providing local school districts with the ability to have additional sources to federal funding, $500 million through school-based mental health services grant programs to increase the qualified mental health service providers and provide school-based mental health services to students and school districts with demonstrated need. And Mr. Superintendent and our board president, you can bet I'm going to be with you every step of the way to make sure we get our money, our fair share of that money here in our Fresno Unified School District. Because I've got a dear friend who's one of the head psychologists here at Fresno Unified. And Julia's told me it's 24/7, Governor, and first partner, that her phone goes off for mental health issues, attempted suicides. And it's been one of the impacts of the pandemic. So your signing of this bill today is critical. The two of you are role models, and your passion for not only your own family, but for the children of families throughout this state is to be credited. And we thank you. So with that, let me do my part in introducing a person who knows a great deal about this subject matter. Rebecca Alleman is the vice principal for McLean High School. Now, I know something about principals and vice principals because when I was in school, I was in their office on a regular basis. But she has spent the last 8 years as a school's restorative counselor. She heads up the school's social emotional team. Critical. Before coming to education, she also worked as a clinical licensed social worker. And she's committed to help students manage their anxiety and mental health issues to creating a safe space at school for students, something we very, very much need. So without further ado, the vice principal of the home of the Highlanders, McLean High School, Rebecca Alleman.
Thank you, Representative Costa, for that introduction. And I thank you also for the opportunity, Mr. Wolf, and also extending the opportunity to invite me to speak. Having adults on campus to serve our students' mental health needs is invaluable to our educational system, because when we are able to provide the supports that students need in order to cope with their anxiety, their depression, the adjustment issues that we've seen, definitely that we've seen now that the numbness of the pandemic has worn off, then we are able to connect with those students with a caring adult that has the resources to be able to help students work through those big emotions that are interfering with their ability to learn. Thankfully, our district and our school has made providing social emotional supports a priority by investing in a team, as our superintendent shared. Yet even with the tremendous work that we've done, it's still not enough. We have students that we are not able to meet the demand of the students that we have at the pace of high school. When students do not have access to mental health supports, they're more inclined to act out, and then their behavior is often misunderstood. They have a greater tendency to use avoidance by missing school and or self-medicating as a means to escape negative thoughts and emotions, which we know often compounds the issue. I've been told by former students that having a safe adult to turn to who was able to help them get through a difficult time was sometimes the only reason they continued to show up. As a relationship-centered school, our faculty and staff understand the importance of having social emotional supports on campus. And because each of us rely on one another to keep watch on our youth in order to bridge referrals for supports as soon as possible, this work brings us as adults closer as well in our efforts to keep our youth safe, well, and engaged. Thank you for supporting and investing in our students' mental health. And I have the privilege to introduce one of our students. She's a senior with us. She's amazing, and her name is Aliyah Barajas.
So I just want to start by saying thank you guys so much for having me here. This opportunity is amazing. I want to say thank you to my principal for even considering me for this, and as well as the governor's team and him for allowing me to be here. I'm a senior here at McLean. I'm part of the Art Venture Production Academy, which is a pathway here. And coincidentally, our culminating event and projects are centered around mental health. Mental health isn't a new topic to me. And I had a speech planned yesterday that was a little bit less personal, just going over the fact that everyone has mental health problems. But I realized overnight that this opportunity is a little bit too grand to just go over what everyone knows. So I have a story to tell you guys, and it may be a little bit triggering to hear for some people. However, I think that we need to be raw and honest with our emotions, especially being a student voice around this topic. It's important to hear these things. So, at the end of 5th grade, I started noticing symptoms of depression. And at 10 years old, I self-harmed for the first time. And At the time, I didn't understand the weight of these actions and feelings because, quite honestly, a lot of people around me were having the same feelings and making the same actions. Sorry, I don't want to cry because it's not... It was at the end of 6th grade when I had a couple friends who were courageous enough to speak out and tell my teacher that I was having these feelings and making these actions. And at the time, I didn't like the fact that they snitched on me. And when I was talked to by my teacher and a vice principal, it felt like I was getting in trouble. But looking back, I understand why they did that, and that is exactly what we need from students. However, after that conversation I had with my vice principal and my teacher, no action was taken. My parents weren't, I'm sorry, I made eye contact with them in it. Thank you. My parents weren't contacted. I wasn't referred to a counselor like I was told I would be, and there was no follow-up. And luckily, I'm at a place right now where I do feel genuine happiness. I've gotten the help that I need. However, I feel it's necessary to say this story in front of this audience because I know I'm not the first, the last, or the only 10-year-old girl who had to go through that. And so I just want to thank Governor Gavin Newsom for his efforts with this very real and prevalent issue that we have with students here, students all around the country and world. I know firsthand that the positive change that we're going to see from these investments and focus into students' mental health, it will make a difference. And I can't wait to see what happens. I went off script a little bit, but I think I'll end it there. And so I'm going to introduce the first partner, Jennifer Siebel Newsom.
Aliyah? Yes. Aliyah, sorry. Aliyah.
My name's Aliyah Barajas, ALIYAH, Yes, senior here at McLean. Thank you.
Thank you, Aliyah. That was beautiful. Buenos días a todos. Qué orgullo estar aquí con ustedes en Fresno hoy. With children and youth heading back to school this August and September, families across the state are in the midst of an exciting and yet stressful time. But the anxiety, stress, and depression that were already on the rise pre-pandemic has worsened, and the mental health struggles of children across the country has reached crisis levels. The reality in California is that 1/3 of 7th and 9th graders and nearly half of 11th graders experienced chronic sadness this year. Last year, there had been a 40% increase in Latino youth suicide between 2014 and 2020. And this past year alone, nearly half of LGBTQ+ youth considered suicide. Mental health is now the leading cause of hospitalization for children under 18. These numbers are alarming, In fact, they're truly heartbreaking and a reason for tears. Our children are clearly hurting. And don't get me started on the cultural impact of addictive technology, violent video games, and social media that are consuming our nation's youth's attention, if not the adults' attention. As a state, we have a duty to step in and provide young people and their families with real, tangible support and resources, especially in schools where children are spending so much of their time. And as the governor will explain, the state is meeting this challenge head on. That's why it's so great to see the amazing and intentional work you all are doing right here in Fresno to support the mental health needs of students at McLean High School and across the school district. And I'm excited to promote these practices statewide. Y cuando nuestros hijos están en crisis, tenemos que hacer lo necesario para ayudarles. Gracias al plan del gobernador, ustedes y los jóvenes pueden empezar a utilizar ciertos recursos hoy para mejorar el bienestar de todos. The state's Youth Mental Health Resource Hub, which is housed on the Cal HHS website, connects children, families, and educators with resources in Inglés y en Español on mindfulness, how to manage stress and anxiety, as well as crisis hotlines and helplines. The goal of these resources is to give families and children access to the tools and support that they need to improve their mental health and build lifelong wellness habits and practices that won't just help them to survive, but to thrive. I'm particularly excited to share the California Healthy Kids Thriving Mind series. This is an amazing evidence-based video series that includes study guides for caregivers and educators to teach kids clinically proven mental health skills, including understanding their feelings and thoughts, managing intense emotions, which we all have, and relaxation skills. And so I want to share 2 of these videos with you today.
I just kind of do it, maybe like 3 or 4 at a time.
I slowly catch my breath and breathe slowly, and it definitely helps. It calms it all the way down.
It can be helpful to practice these relaxation strategies even when you're feeling calm. Put one hand on your stomach and one hand on your chest. Slowly breathe in and expand your belly like a balloon, and then slowly breathe out and feel the balloon deflate. You'll feel your body begin to relax as you continue to take slow, paced breaths. Make sure to breathe into your belly, not your chest, and go slow. Try to breathe in your nose for 4 seconds and out your mouth for 6.
Pausas, respiras y ya.
Respirar por la nariz hasta que se llene la panza, contar hasta 3 y después sacar todo el aire como desinflar un globo.
Cierro mis ojos y respiro.
Si tengo una presentación con alguien y estoy nervioso, que algo va a pasar mal, siempre trato de calmarme.
Sé que suena sencillo, casi ridículo, pero en ese momento en el que estás perdiendo el control, puede ser difícil acordarse de respirar. Así que trata de detenerte un segundo. Concéntrate en tu respiración y si tienes un lugar tranquilo que te gusta imaginar, puedes ir allí en tu mente.
So I recommend and encourage you all to check out this series and our other resources on the Cal HHS website. Again, it's for children, it's for youth, it's for parents, it's for caregivers, it's for educators, administrators. And now I'm going to turn it over to my husband, our governor, Gavin Newsom.
Thank you, Jen, and thank you all. We just call him Bob around here, Mr. Superintendent. Bob, thank you for the privilege of inviting all of us and convening all of us. Madam President, thank you. Supervisor, it's wonderful to be back with you. And, of course, my 2 close friends and allies, not just partners, real leaders, Dr. Ramla, and of course, Jim Costa, Congressman Costa. It's always wonderful to see you both as well. Rebecca, thank you for all your work you do every single day. And Aaliyah, thank you for bringing us home and putting this all in perspective. And I will, I'll apologize to my wife for having Aaliyah go in front of her because it does sober this occasion. And I think it's an occasion, even if you're not willing to admit it publicly, I think privately all of us are shaking our head because we all know Aaliyah or someone like Aaliyah. All of us, some more intimately than others. Sometimes that person's the person you see every single morning when you're brushing your teeth. The last 2 years, there's been a stacking of stress, the likes of which none of us could have conceived of and none of us hope for in the future. And that stacking of stress comes from years and years where we've neglected your mental health, where we've neglected investing in the subject that brings us here today. We came into this pandemic with the former Surgeon General for the Obama administration who said the #1 preventable disease in the United States of America, the #1 preventable disease in the United States of America was social isolation, loneliness, despair, hopelessness, and how it manifests. And again, all of us understand that on some level. That's how we entered into this pandemic. And now we're struggling to work our way through. And so we're here mindful of how many people are counting on us and how many people are expecting us to do more and do better. And so we are here with that sober appreciation and understanding of the magnitude and the scale of our responsibility. I don't want to belabor these points, but I need to make this point. The world that we're living in today didn't happen overnight. It's over the course of decades and decades of neglect that we ended up here across the spectrum. You can go back to the 40s and 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, not just here in California, but throughout the United States, as we moved away, fits and starts to address the issue of brain health. And what we have now is a fragmented system, a system that is completely disconnected, a system that self-evidently has failed and continues to fail people like Leah and millions of others. And we have a lot of work to do to turn that around. And that's not going to happen overnight. We can lay blame. We could talk about the good old days, though I'm not sure they were as bright as some suggest. But this wasn't one policy. This was a series of policies that occurred for all the right reasons. People shouldn't be confined against their own will. Civil liberties. Others who had good intentions about funding alternatives but didn't follow up on the funding. Across the spectrum, we've been at each other's throats going back and forth, talking about woulda, coulda, shoulda, and what we could have done better and how to address these issues. And so we've been thinking anew about this in the last few years, not just the last few months. We didn't wait till the pandemic to start focusing on these issues, quite the contrary. What we're announcing here today has been an effort over the course of many, many years. And we were presented with an extraordinary opportunity over the last few years, and that was to fund this vision in ways we've never funded it in the past. What we are announcing here today is just one component of our comprehensive strategy to systematically connect dots and address the issue of mental health and behavioral health once and for all in this state. We have crisis care. It's universal, by the way. For those who don't think we provide care, we do. It's provided at the county jail every single day. I saw some probation officers out front. It's provided out in the streets and sidewalks. It's provided in costs that each and every one of you bear, and the cost of the evidence of our failure to address it more systemically. So what we are doing is approaching this very differently in a way that all of the academics said we should have been doing all along, and that is focusing less on crisis care and more on interventions early. Treat brain health early. We say in this report, we don't punish it later. Treat brain health early so you don't punish it later, humanizing, not criminalizing this issue. Aaliyah made the point about the stigma that comes from this and how she felt her friends were snitches because she may have been a little embarrassed, feeling like she was the only one. The stigmatization is so profound and pronounced. That's why her courage today was demonstrable and how impactful that has in ways I assure you, you don't fully appreciate. And that's a foundational principle of the work we're trying to achieve and advance today. But I come here, and I'll try to sum up. I don't want to take too much of your time. We come here because we wanted to identify success. This is an amazing school. I mean, we looked all across the state of California. Congressman Costa said, thanks for coming back to the Valley. I said, but for good reasons. We're into excellence. We want to share best practice. We want to highlight what's working. This school, you heard Bob mention it, you know, from 50 counselors to over 200, from $5 million invested over a few years to $38 million. That was before the state started stepping up, before the rest of the country started to recognize the urgency of this issue. So success leaves clues, and we've been learning from you here. And we are looking to scale so many of the things that you have been doing in a way that we have never done in the state of California. So here's long-windedly what we're proposing today. $4.7 billion. $4.7 billion to focus on universal screening and support and services for all of our children in the state of California from the age of 0 to 25. $4.7 billion. That's money in the bank. We're not proposing this. We're doing this. And forgive me for highlighting this. I heard the Uvalde example a moment ago, but there were a lot of politicians waxing on after Uvalde saying, we need to focus on mental health. Those same politicians were the ones that cut mental health in their states. One governor in particular by $211 million. In the state of California, we're advancing by close to $5 billion our supports for children 0 to 25. The biggest limiting factor, though, is all of you. It's not resources, it's human capital. It's people willing to do this work. And I see some of you pointing to yourselves. Congratulations and thank you for the work you're doing, but we need more of you and we need to support you more. I see some of my brothers and sisters in UHW here that have been doing incredible work on parity and equity, on focusing on making sure we have career opportunities and a workforce dignity and respect, and that's exactly what this plan offers. 40,000 behavioral health professionals we want to train over the next few years with real resources to back that up. We want to double in the state of California, double. This is just table stakes, minimum. Double the number of school counselors in the state of California, and here's how we're backing that up. We will provide $20,000 scholarships for 2 years of your service. You come to the schools and you work as a counselor, peer support, a paraprofessional. You provide support, $20,000 of any of your loans or education will be forgiven, specifically in this plan. That's one of many different components in this plan that make me really proud and make me excited to be here. You saw what my wife just presented. She's been working hard. There are dozens and dozens of videos. We went out, we looked at the best practices nationally and found some of the smartest minds out there on how to truly communicate in a culturally competent way the issues, these complex issues, and use these videos. They're not just for you as a consumer, but as trainers. There's dozens and dozens of these videos. We just published them and put them out. So this is a surround sound plan. It's not just throwing money. This is thought through in a very nuanced and detailed way. But at the end of the day, I say this too often, localism's determinative. State vision has to be realized here. We can't do it for you, but we are here for you in ways the state has never been in the past. So there's nothing like this in the United States of America. I just read about one state that used some of their stimulus money, thank you, Jim Costa, because some of this is the federal funds, to open 2 new prisons. Alabama, $400 million to open 2 new mega prisons. California, We're open hearts and minds to try to destigmatize and address these fundamental issues. We're proud to use the phrase social and emotional support. You got a state of Florida that just banned 42 books because they don't like that phrase. And if you think I'm lying or exaggerating, look that up. What we're doing is unique. It distinguishes itself in the country, but it's a work in progress. And so final words on this. I don't want to overpromise in the short run, but I'm not going to underpromise in the medium and long term what these seeds will represent in terms of the fruits of your labor to make them real over the course of the next few years and, dare I say, decades. We are blessed to have Assemblymember Arambula. Not only gets it, but gets so much done. That's why I refer to him as Dr. Arambula. We are blessed to have people like Jim Costa that are out there as fierce advocates and fighting every single day, not just for all of you out here in the Central Valley, but throughout the state of California. But nothing fills our heart more, Mom, Dad, than leaders like your daughter. It takes a hell of a lot of courage to come up here. I never could have done that. I'd have run, not walked. And so, Aaliyah, thank you for the work you're doing. Keep at it. And thank you all very much. With that, I do have one piece of business, and that is to do something we haven't done in 35 years, and that is to update an old statute. Talking about peer counseling, talking about counselors, where there's no reference to mental health in the old statute. There's no reference to behavioral health or substance abuse. It's all around career preparedness. So we want to update the statute because the Assembly members' leadership and the leadership of Sharon Quirk-Sorba in particular, the Assemblywoman, I will have the privilege today to make real what they have been promoting for the last few years and to require in these professional disciplines the responsibility to include social-emotional construct, to include a mental and behavioral health framework, and to begin to focus the brain as we focus the body with parity and consistency across the spectrum in this state. And that bill now is law in the state of California. With that, we're all here to answer any questions. That was easy. That's yours. Thank you. You did all the hard work. Any questions for any of us?
Justin Sazier, CBS 47. Can you tell me about current staffing, like the ratio of counselors per school or per student, and how that'll change with this? And are you pursuing a particular number based on research on what's most effective?
Yeah, so we have a numerical number of minimum 10,000 new school counselors that were part of the first phase of this program, 40,000 overall in the behavioral health bucket. By the way, that 40,000 workforce comes with an additional $1.4 billion of backing in addition to 4.7. I confuse all of you. If you're paying attention, I've confused you. Except to say, we are here for the long haul on the workforce training. That numeric will allow us to at least double the number of staff. Is it ideal? It's not enough yet. I'm the first to acknowledge that. They just have 3 nurses here, which is extraordinary. When I went to school, we didn't have any nurses, and we were about 2,000 folks up there in a fancy high school in Marin County. The fact you even have 3 is remarkable, but it's not enough. Even with all the other supports, I imagine you can do extraordinarily well or better by doubling that. So, you know, I'll leave it to Bob and others to localize the strategy in terms of numerics, but we're not going to require a ratio yet. We've done that for preschool. We've done that on kindergarten. We've done that in other areas as we have worked to stabilize the funding sources, but we want to have their backs first to design the system before we then fulfill that desire for a metric. Oh, sorry. Oh, I can hear you.
Hey, I'm LaSherika Thorne with the Fresno Beach Education Lab. What type of state oversight or guidance would you guys provide, if any?
Well, lots. I mean, we have we have a cross-section of team leaders on this. Let me be specific, because that sounds like pablum. In this plan specifically, there are 14 work streams, 4 specific areas of focus. Those work streams have teams that are cross-jurisdictional as it relates to oversight and technical assistance. We already have put toolkits together for cities and counties, and I say cities and counties intentionally, not superintendents and county superintendents, but cities and counties as well, because an additional component of this is our $4.1 billion investment in community schools, which is a big component of bringing in the community to support and partner in these efforts. Again, it's all about breaking down silos. I don't want to burden you, but you're going to keep hearing about it. Just put in the back of your mind, I won't even write it down. We are committing as well to the most significant reform of our Medi-Cal system in our history. It's called CalAIM. And it's about full integration in terms of preventative care and wellness, and about integrating funding streams to incentivize the kind of partnerships that we're hoping to advance. So it's not one or two people or one or two agencies. It's multidisciplinary, it's comprehensive. All of these pieces come together. That's why I said today is one component of a foundational reform of the system. And I didn't bring up something called Care Court, which goes deeply to what's going out on our streets and sidewalks, which we think is the most significant reform as it relates to addressing the issues that we're experiencing, and you notably as well here in Fresno are experiencing, to help people get the kind of care that they deserve before they end up in the criminal justice system and conserved in the back end as well. So all of these come together, and we'll be laying out more detail in that vision over the course of the next many months.
Hi, this is Liz Juarez with Media GV Wire. I had a question for, well, I was going to ask you, do you think implementing a full-on strict cell phone policy ban in schools would help improve mental health in students?
I'm going to leave that to my senior advisor, quite literally senior advisor, Aaliyah. What is your thoughts on this? It's yours. You said you wanted to do it. Come on. This is part of the job. Come on, Aaliyah.
This is so controversial, though.
Gosh. Can you repeat the question? Leah wants to make sure she got it.
Think implementing a full strict cell phone policy ban in schools would help improve the mental health of students?
No. I think that's a total invasion of people's privacy. That's your property, and I believe that if you pay for it, sorry about this.
See, practical mental health supports on the table.
We'll see you later.
So yeah, to close off that question, I don't believe that taking away technology, even in general, within a household, betters mental health. I believe technology has the ability to solve a lot of temporary happiness. However, I still believe that students and people should be finding happiness outside of their phones.
I like that. That's quotable. I concur.
Alyssa Flores with ABC 30. Would you say that this plan is part of the state's response to prevent on-campus violence, gun violence?
Well, it's not the answer to that, but it is an answer to that, absolutely. I find a lot of lazy punditry talking about gun violence as a mental health issue. Columbia University just did the probably best, most detailed, comprehensive study looking at particularly these mass shootings, and less than 5% were kids with mental illness. Now you say, well, anyone who kills someone else is mentally ill. That's a little lazy. So I find that fictitious and increasingly offensive, because I've been hearing that most of my life. That said, it's certainly part of it, and I wouldn't deny that for a second.
LaSherica with the Fresno Bees Ed Lab again. What in particular led you guys to the ideas of making this, like you said, all the above approach from the proactive response, from proactive to responsive?
Well, When I was young, someone said to me, there are two driving forces of life, inspiration and desperation. And we've been inspired by many things, but I just see too many people desperate, too many people struggling and suffering. And, these issues are brought home, all of us. I mean, full disclosure, it's not the first time I brought it up, but I rarely do. My grandfather committed suicide. It was brought deeply into our home, these issues. Many family members that self-medicate every night. Just get through the night, wake up the next day, rinse and repeat. I mean, again, I am not alone. So, it's personal, but it's also responsibility. I'm the governor of California. I see what's happening on the streets and sidewalks. You do as well. But it's what I don't see that makes me more concerned. It's what's hidden, because people don't have the courage that Aaliyah had to even tell her 2 friends. And we find out only when it's too late. And you know what? That can't happen on our watch. Society becomes how we behave, and we have a responsibility to do something about it.
Alexis Govea with Fox 26 News. I have a quick question, Governor, pertaining to water. Are we ever going to build another dam here in California to help save water?
Well, not another, a number of them. Now, we define storage broadly, and as you know, above ground and below ground storage are part and parcel of an initiative that was passed by the voters, $2.7 billion initiative to store 2.77 million acre feet of water. We have 4 projects that are below ground storage, 3 above ground, sites being perhaps the most notable. And we have a team that has been organized with exclusive focus on fast tracking the dam permitting and connect the funding dots that have been missing on getting that project done. So Jim's been a huge part of that, the congressman. The funding that they just provided and the bipartisan infrastructure bill and the funding they provided because of their leadership, not identifying a problem, with the last, unfortunately, partisan plan will afford us the opportunity to fill some of those gaps and move those projects forward. I laid out a detailed plan last week, which I hope you covered, as it relates to those efforts and many, many others to address the issue of water scarcity in this state. With that, you can never escape a water question in the Central Valley. I will end, as I always do, with deference to my wife, Jennifer Siebel Newsom.
Well, no, I just wanted to add to the question about our times. And the governor announced that we have a physical fitness and mental health advisory council that has just started work, and we look forward to spending time with you in Fresno to not just learn from you, but then to share best practices across the state and set goals in terms of physical fitness and mental health and well-being. Look, we're living in really extreme times, and I just want to reinforce the fact that with the advent of technology and so much time online and so many pressures, we live in a consumer culture, a materialistic culture, a fast-paced modern culture. There's a lot of pressure on children. There's academic pressure. There's competitive sports pressure. It's a lot, and I know that as a mother of 4 young children. And so, we see children with anxiety and depression. We see the rates having skyrocketed since, again, the early 2000s. This is not new. Obviously, the pandemic pulled back the curtains and shed a light on all of this. But I just want to reinforce that this investment is so critical because of what we're all seeing and experiencing. But also, it's critical because if we don't change things now, how can we surprise when we have the violence that we have, the rhetoric that we have, the bigotry, the hate, the racism online and in person? I mean, these are really dire times. There's a lack of civility, there's a lack of recognizing each other's humanity, there's a lack of decency, and all of this is contributing on top of the fact that there's so much pressure. on young girls, girls of color, LGBTQ youth, children living in poverty. They're the ones whose suicide rates have skyrocketed. And so I can't imagine being a young person today. I sometimes, truthfully, am heartbroken that we're raising 4 children in a culture that so demeans them, ridicules them, exposes them to violence in all forms, online, technology, video games, again, hatred, bigotry via social media, these crazy perfectionism standards for young girls and women of color on social media. So again, we want to provide support to these children. And one of the reasons we have this Physical Fitness and Advisory Council that will continue to share more information with school districts about, and again, glean best practices, is that we want to be an alternative to all of the hate and the pain and the suffering and the anxiety. And that's part of the reason my office in particular has had the support from the governor in focusing on parks and focusing on farm to school and on social emotional learning and getting kids outdoors in nature, in community, in connection with each other, eating healthy whole foods. It's about the whole child. And that's really at the end of the day, for me as a mother, first and foremost, also as a documentary filmmaker, my films address these subject matters, but this is why this issue is so important. It's our humanity. Our children are our future, as so many folks have said, and that's why this investment is so critical. It's now or never. And I really believe that. It's now or never. So I'm just so grateful that the governor and the administration and the legislature have committed this amount, and thank you so much to McLean. You guys are exceptional. Exceptional. And you're going to be our role model, and we're going to have to parade, all of your best practices across the state because the rest of the state's going to have to follow suit pretty quickly. All right, thanks, everyone. Thank you.